The 20th Century Italian Guitar Making. Lorenzo Bellafontana, 1906-1979. Lorenzo Bellafontana is one of those few Italian luthiers who first interpreted the Torres model with skill and originality. While respecting its main canons, these luthiers were able to impress in their works a sonorous Italian taste color. In fact, this was also the result of a knowledge and a way of working wood deriving from centuries of old Italian luthier tradition. These topics have already been dealt by me in the book The Legno che Canta, The Singing Wood, edited by Curci. Bellafontana was born in Genoa in 1906. His grandfather, Lorenzo, from Rovereto di Gavi, a village in southern Piedmont, was a foundling left at the foot of a fountain, hence the origin of their surname. His father, Luigi, a furniture maker for pleasure, enrolled him in an academy of fine arts, but he also attended a musical institute in Genoa, where he studied violin. In 1924, he started working as an apprentice in the workshop of Oreste Candi, where he remained for 10 years, learning the construction of stringed instruments and guitars. In recent years, he also perfected himself with Cesare Candi, Oreste's brother, and the great master luthier. After the long training period with the Candi brothers, in 1934 he opened his own workshop in Genova Pegli, starting to build Guadagnini-style guitar, but after a short period he moved on to the Torres model. Before proceeding further, it is better to recall the main constructive and organological characteristics of the model created by Antonio de Torres in Spain in the mid-19th century, a model that gradually imposed itself on the rest of Europe in the early 20th century. The most important and also the most striking novelty is the design of the shape, pantilla, based on new mathematical and harmonic relationships between the length of the vibrating string and the size of the shape, the fan-shaped bracing system in the lower part of the soundboard, and finally the shape and size of the bridge. Historically, the first instruments built in Italy on the Torres model were produced, according to current discoveries, not before 1930. At the time in Italy, the most popular type of guitar was the Guadagnini model. The glorious dynasty of these Turin luthiers was still alive with Francesco and his son Paolo, builders of violins and guitars using a family model and far from the new Spanish one. Mozzani's guitars were equally sought after in Italy, especially in the north, together with his lira and mezza lira models. These were the reference models for the Italian guitarists who showed a strong nationalistic spirit widespread in those years under the fascist regime, with little interest in novelties from abroad, including Spanish guitars. The contribution of Andres Segovia was crucial because, through his intense concert activity all over the world, he introduced the new Spanish model, first with the Manuel Ramirez of 1914, then with the Hermann Hauser of 1937, both built following the principles of Torres. It was precisely a Segovia concert held in Genoa in 1935 that inspired Bellafontana, present at the concert, to devote himself to the construction of the Spanish model, considered by him superior to the Italian model, as he himself declares in an interview to a Genovese newspaper in 1975. According to the testimony of Mr. Gastaldo, owner of a 1936 Bellafontana No. 1 Ramirez copy, as reported in the label, it seems that Bellafontana went to visit Segovia after the concert to take a look on the Manuel Ramirez guitar, since, as he recounts in the interview cited above, he set out in search of someone who owned a Ramirez to be able to study it and then make a copy of it. He found it in Turin by the guitarist Raineri, owner of a Julian Gomez Ramirez. Perhaps realizing that the instrument was not a Manuel Ramirez like the one from Segovia, but still bit in the Spanish style, he thought it was enough to use that as a reference sample. In fact, he made the No. 1 Ramirez copy of 1936 faithfully following the original model, also in the decorative details, and that is therefore to be considered the first instrument built by Bellafontana in the Spanish style. Recently, another guitar of his from 1935 emerged, model Julian Gomez Ramirez, currently under study. In 1937, he moved to a new laboratory in Via Chiosone, in the center of Genoa, where he mainly built Julian Gomez Ramirez model guitars and some violins. It was a faithful period in which he began to include in his guitars personal elements, both decorative and structural. An important structural aspect concerns the soundboard, which is always flat, i.e. devoid of the curvature, both transversal and longitudinal, always present in the guitars of Torres and his followers. The proceeding of the strutting system is also personal, especially those struts distributed radially in the lower part of the soundboard in order to obtain the right flexibility through different sizes of them. For the counterbands of the soundboard and the bottom, he always uses poplar wood of conspicuous thickness and with external cuts to model them to the shape. For the neck, he almost always uses mahogany wood in place of the cedar used by the Spaniards, a practice traditionally used also by other Italian luthiers of his time. Bellafontana was also skilled in artistic drawing, a passion he has always cultivated, preferring the technique of ornamentation, abandoned the filleting of the contour of the table, imaginative shapes of the headstock, always with different designs. In the early 1940s, he switched from the Julian Gomez Ramirez model to the Torres model. On the basis of a study I carried out regarding some of his notes, confirmed by reliable testimonies, it can be said that in that period Bellafontana was able to copy, directly or indirectly, the Torres of Emilio Pujol, the guitar FE16 of 1863. In the notes, there is the technical sheet of that guitar, where the dimensions of the body, the length of the diapason, the dimensions of the neck, the thickness of the soundboard, the measures and the description of the tornavoz are reported. The card, however, is incomplete, as the entire internal part of the body is not described, due to the tornavots present in the Torres guitar of Pujol, which does not allow an internal inspection, missing very important elements such as the bracing system of the soundboard, its shape, arrangement and dimensions, as well as the shape of the counterbands. Guitars from this period up to the early 1950s were referred to by Bellafontana as the Torres model, although in reality the bracing system was still based on that of Julian Gomez Ramirez. The 1940s were also years of terrible disasters for Bellafontana due to the war. His laboratory in Via Chiosone, located on the top floor of a building, suffered extensive damage during the bombing of Genova in 1942, and it took a lot of effort and a lot of time to restore. In the meanwhile, his colleague, Giuseppe Lecchi, his shopmate when they both worked with the Candi brothers, hosted him in his workshop. Unfortunately, a second bombing in 1944 completely destroyed his laboratory, forcing him to move to Piazza Paolo da Novi. During the war, deprived of his laboratory, he took lessons to improve how to play the viola, which allowed him to enter the Genovese orchestra of the Carlo Felice Theatre. However, at this terrible period, he was able to build several guitars, including one from 1941, the number 35, one of the most beautiful I have seen, dedicated to his friend and collaborator Arnaldo Casassa. This beautiful guitar, model Torres, masterfully finished, reflects the dimensions of the aforementioned card. It was Casassa, a fervent guitar enthusiast, who had a direct contact with Pujol, and Fontana thought to build him a special instrument. Inside the body, in the place hidden from view, there is a dramatic statement written by hand on paper, in which, in addition to the affectionate dedication to his friend, Bellafontana described his state of mind and his opposition to the regime and the war. In 1942, he built a second guitar for his friend, the heptachord model. This new model was also built for Federico Orsolino, a well-known guitarist in Genoa, a staunch supporter of the heptachord guitar, for which he wrote several compositions. Despite the addition of a seventh string in the low register, the instrument still slightly differed from the Torres model usually used, the differences concerning a great width of the fingerboard and the modification of the headstock on the bass side. On a guitar from 1945, the numbering 9 heptachord is noted, and the small production of this model show the limited interest in Genoa. After the war, he devoted himself to a full-time construction of guitars, violins, cellos, and bows, in addition to the restoration activity. In 1948, he moved to Via Giacometti, where he had his home and laboratory. In 1951, he won a luthier competition in Parma, organized by the International Guitar Union. In this period, his instruments are highly appreciated and requested by Carlo Palladino, whom he had an intense working relationship and received a constant orders from. In 1953 he moved to Corso Torino. There he worked, always on commission, producing guitars and string instruments. The Genoese guitarist Eli Tagore also wanted a Bellafontana, and in 1954 he built a Torres model guitar, number 108, for her. Now this guitar is owned by the guitarist Paola Lanzola. This is one of the best I have ever seen. Some important changes can be seen in this tool. The shape is slightly larger. The bracing of the lower part of the soundboard is equipped with oblique struts, absent in previous models, making the guitar even more faithful to the Spanish ones inspired to Torres. Regarding the different types of wood used to make his guitars, Bellafontana's attitude was now very canonical, which is an exception to almost all the other luthiers, always using red spruce for the soundboard, Indian rosewood for the body and the bridge, mahogany for the neck. In the mid-60s, Bellafontana's guitars begin to change, moving away from the previous models. The design of the shape becomes more personal, larger in size, which he calls the large Torres format, differentiating it from the normal Torres model. In these years, the quantity of guitars produced also decreased, offset by the production of string instruments. In 1967, he received from the municipality of Genoa the curator of Paganini's violin assignment, which is the famous canon built by Guarnieri del Gesù. This prestigious assignment represents the crowning of a career and the recognition of a high professionalism as a master luthier, helping to increase his fame as a skilled violin maker, but therefore dedicating less time to the production of guitars. The serenity and artistic satisfaction achieved in that period was broken by yet another calamity that seriously damaged the house and laboratory in Corso Torino. Being located on the ground floor, close to the Bisagno stream, Bellafontana's laboratory was invaded by the disastrous flood of Genoa in 1970. During the 70s, the production of guitars progressively decreased. Moreover, it suffered the competition of the quality industrial instrument, toward which most of the guitarists were oriented in those years, Ramirez house above all. The few guitars built in recent years reflected the new trend, dictated more by the satisfaction of current tastes than by his own conviction. Bellafontana's guitars are all numbered. It is estimated that he built about 170 guitars. In the summer season, he used to move to his country house in San Michele di Mondovì. There he had a small workshop where he did some luthery work, dedicating himself to the construction of bows. It was in this country village that he died suddenly on June the 30th, 1979. Having had no pupils, he was the last exponent of the prestigious Candi school in Genoa.